It's the Elsa Show, conservative views on world news. Brought to you by The Wellness Company. Prepare for the unexpected. And now, it's time for the show.
Well, hello, everyone. We have another special show for you today. Clay is not going to be by my side. Do not be alarmed. I have our good friend, Mark Deluzio, with us today. We are talking all things Marxism. Why? Because it is, I don't have to tell you why. You already know why. This is so relevant and so important right now. And we are going to cover this whole topic, and hopefully you can pass this along to some of your liberal leftist friends and maybe educate them a little bit. So, Mark, welcome to the show. Welcome back to the show. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you. I really enjoy working with you. I love your podcast, you and Clay. You are doing us a service as a nation, and I just happy to be part of it.
Thank you. As are you with your show, Constitutional Solution. What's the rest of it? There's more to it.
Constitutional Solution, one podcast under God.
Thank you. I just drew a blank.
We want to remind people that the Constitution was founded under Christian principles, and people seem to forget that, or ignore it, or deny it, and that's why we put that in there, because there's a lot of biblical implications to the Constitution, even though God's not mentioned in there for a reason, but the Declaration has the Lord mentioned 4 times, and 3 of those times it refers to him being fundamentally the 3 branches of our government, which is the judicial, the legislative, and the executive branch. And if you look at the Constitution, you'll find him mentioned there 4 times, and that's how Jefferson wrote that, and that's how they derived the branches and the checks and balances that go within it. Because God could do all those things, but man cannot. So we had to split the powers up into 3 separate parts of our government. And even then, we have a big problem doing it, which we're going to talk about. So
absolutely. Yeah, and definitely we must, because again, a huge part of the conversation, as we know, there are people on the left right now being very, very vocal about the uselessness and even detriment, they're trying to say, of the Constitution. And this all falls right in line with our topic, right? I mean, this is really what everything right now is coming down to. I mean, ultimately it's coming down to good and evil, but this is the manifestation of the evil, right? So I was thinking what we would do is, I really want to walk through understanding and explaining Marxism, its origins, why it's a problem, and what we're going to do about it. So I'd like to first start off with the backstory of Marxism, Karl Marx. We're going to talk about him. I'd love to go into the differences, because I think people, including myself, I've been doing my research and watching a lot of the Heritage Foundation courses.
Great group, by the way. Great group. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Such a wealth of information, and so well done, so thorough. But yeah, I'd like to go into the differences between Marxism, socialism, communism, and then also progressivism. And then, like I said, then I'd like to talk about, and we can weave this kind of all together, but why it's bad, because, I think what they like to do is they like to dress it up with a pretty bow. Like, everybody is equal. Everybody has the same. It's so nice. It's so lovely in community. And that's the ribbon they tie around this incredibly destructive, badly formed concept. And then what else? See, this is what happens when I can't read my own writing when you scribble. Just ways that we can combat this, and what we can do, and recognize it. I think recognizing it is huge, because this is a problem. Not enough people are recognizing the Marxist, messaging really that's coming through. So let's start right at the top. Let's talk about Karl Marx. I have my basic outline of him. He's from Germany. He was a radical journalist. He had a communist vision. He denied human nature, and he misunderstood politics and economy. And I think economics was the biggest error on his part. Now, what I'm curious about was his vision intentionally evil, or was he just a very misguided man? So let's kind of get your perspective.
I struggle with that. That's a good question, Elsa.
Thank you.
Because part of me is saying like many today, they don't know what they're asking for. They don't know what they're doing. And it wasn't until the philosopher Nietzsche predicted that the adoption of the Communist Manifesto, which was written in 1848 by both our friend Karl Marx and Frederick Engels, would end up. He predicted that it would end up in the deaths of millions and millions of people, and he was absolutely on the money. Okay, so did they really intend? I don't know. It's hard to tell, and I've done a lot of research on that too, and I kind of get answers yes and no. Okay, I don't know if there's a clear answer to that based on what I've read about it. Okay, I gotta believe though that these weren't stupid people, but they made a lot of miscalculations, and I sometimes think, like today, when you look at our government and you say, why do they do that? And why do they do that? Oh, they're incompetent. Biden's incompetent. Kamala Harris is incompetent. That guy's incompetent. I don't think they are. I think they're very competent in terms of what their goal
Their
is.
true mission, right? Their true goal. They're very competent. Yes.
Right. And I actually said this to Mark Meadows one time when I was running for Congress. I met him twice in his office in D.C. You know, remember Mark Meadows was the chief of staff for Trump. And just at the time the Afghan pullout happened, right? And I said to Mark, Mark, if I wanted to mess up that pullout any more than it happened, I wouldn't be able to do a better job. So that leads me to believe it was intentional.
Right.
Nobody could screw up that badly. Okay.
And it was an exceptional mess.
Oh my God. I mean, it was another Saigon when we pulled out of Saigon. It was the same thing. And so I can't believe that. And I'm starting to look, and I developed this view now that, and you and I talked about it last time a little bit, but that you start putting the pieces together and understanding the overarching framework of what's going on, then things just start making sense. Whether it's our border, our unbelievably abusive tax and spending system that we have, whether it's the crime, whether it's the anti-Second Amendment, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. All this stuff starts making perfect sense to me, and it's not incompetence. AOC has an economics degree. You don't think she understands supply and demand? Okay, sure she does. But these people, I believe, and I do want to go back to what you said earlier, I think there's a lot of evil. And when I say evil, there's a lot of self-promotion and self-gratification, self-enrichment that goes on in Washington. Andy Biggs here is one of our congressmen, who's, I think, one of the better, we have some of the best congressmen here in Arizona, between Paul Gosar, who's a friend, who's going to be on my show next week, Eli Crane, who beat me for Congress. He's a great congressman, and Andy Biggs. Those three right there are some of the best in the country. And Biggs said that 90+% of the people in Washington are out for themselves, and that's all they care about. They don't care about the country. They do not care about the country. And I just did a podcast yesterday on my show that talked about how we're no longer really a representative government. When you look at the fourth branch of government, all those agencies that are writing law through what they call regulations, we're not represented. That's the executive branch. The president's writing law. When you look at the emergency spending bills that go around Congress, the president can now spend money. That's how Biden's trying to spend money on tuition reimbursement, where the Supreme Court said you can't do that. He didn't care.
Right.
Okay. And then you look at the military-industrial complex, which maybe that should be another episode for another day for you and me. And you look at the Federal Reserve, which I think that should be another episode. Okay, because those are four big things. Those are four big things that you're no longer represented. When I had a problem with IRS, with my business, I had to get a certificate for India, a residency certificate. The IRS is going to tell me I'm a resident here, like I don't know that, right? It took them 90 days and a hell of a lot of money for me. Otherwise, they would have held all this tax. When my clients in India, I called my congressman, and he said, we have no control over the IRS. We can't affect them. And rightly so, because there is a wall between the executive branch, which is the IRS, is controlled by the IRS, and the legislative branch, which is the Congress, right? But even there, though, so I'm not, so who do I call? I called the lady at IRS, and I said to her, you work for us. She said, where does it say that? I said, well, there's a little document called the Constitution. She goes, oh, I'll have to look into that, she said. I'll have to look into that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Scary. That's scary, so Mark. It really is.
So we're supposed to be a representative government, but because of these things I just mentioned and others, we're not. Okay, we're not being represented. Our voices aren't being heard. And so that's where we are. But getting back to Marxism, though, let's go back on what this is all about, because you said it earlier. The framework of everything that's going on here is a Marxist assault. Now, I know I sound like a black helicopter conspiracy theorist, but all my conspiracy theories have come true so far. And by the way, I'm not the first guy to call this out. I mean, Robert Welch called this out in 1958, who was the founder of the John Birch Society. And if you go to the Blue Book and read what he wrote, everything, one of my episodes in my podcast talks about that and how everything that he said came true. Okay, his predictions and his accusations, if you will.
And I'm just curious, was he treated like a conspiracy theorist of that day? Like, oh, you're crazy. Stop your nonsense.
He still is to some degree. He still is. And oh yeah, he was a racist. He was called an anti-Semite. He was called whatever, pick a name. Okay, any kind of phobe he was called. And of course, and again, you and I talked about this last time, that when you have when you start telling the truth, they attack you personally, not the subject at hand. And whenever you see that happening, where they try to demonize you personally, then you won, because then they're just avoiding, and you don't let them default to that.
Right. Okay. That's actually, the first time that I ever heard the term straw man argument was in the realm of these things. When I started becoming more vocal, finding my voice really in all of this, because I had all of the emotions and the anger and the frustration with what I saw happening. We're going back quite a few years now. And I was, way smaller scale, still small scale, but way smaller scale then. And I was mostly arguing with people in my own social media feeds, and not on kind of like a world stage of, arguing with people on social media. And I would get these responses from people on the left that I knew that there was a term for. I knew that this was called something, what they were doing. And for those of you who don't know or don't quite know, the best way I can explain it is, if you make a statement, I think that the sky is, I love that the sky is blue. And they respond with, oh, so you don't like gray skies? Oh, so you don't like, so that's kind of, they want you to defend a point that you never made. And that's a tactic. That is a thing to get you so flustered and discombobulated and apologizing for things that you never even said. And, the best way to counter that is to simply cut them off and say, okay, well, when you want to ask me about what I actually said, then we could continue the conversation. But if you're going to ask me to defend points that I never made, our conversation's over. And then they're defeated. They can't, there's nothing to come back with,
They can't. No.
And once I learned that.
Yeah, well, something like that, I'd probably respond this way. Yeah, gray skies suck. Who the hell likes gray skies? I mean, but by the way, let's go back.
Really, come on.
and use some humor, and then you go back. But by the way, I was talking about the blue skies, okay? And let's get back to that, But it's a tactic. You're absolutely right. And a lot of people fall trapped to that. And you see it on the news all the time when people get railroaded into a corner that they never intended to be in. Now you're arguing that point instead of the main issue.
And I will say Trump is phenomenal at never falling prey to straw man arguments.
That's one of the reasons I hate him.
Yeah.
There's many and there are good reasons why the left hates him. Okay. Right. Because he's taking money out of their pocketbook. Okay. Out of their piggy bank. But you remember what Ronald Reagan said one time? He said, and I'll paraphrase, he said, it's not that our liberal friends don't know anything. It's that they know so much that just isn't so. Okay.
That's brilliant.
And that goes back to what you and I talked about the misinformation and the education system, and had to deprogram my sons, Lincoln didn't know the slaves, the teacher was wrong about that, that kind of stuff. And so but by the way, the education is part of this, okay, the Marxist agenda. So
huge part.
A big part. So let me go back on this now. And so the Communist Manifesto, and I would ask everybody out there to get on Amazon for $10 or whatever it is, order the Communist Manifesto. It's not a long read. There are 10 planks of the Communist Manifesto. And that was written back in 1848 by, Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. We don't talk a lot about him, but everybody calls it Marxism. But the tenets, and I'm just going to go through them. And I want to talk about a few of them. It's too many to talk in the time we have on all of them. One is the abolition of property in land and rents. Okay. By the way, let's just go back to your definition of communism. Communism means the state owns 100% of every means of production. They own everything. Okay. So that means that there's no private business, like your business, no, mine. The state will own that. You work for the state. They want to abolish God, and they don't want you worshiping God. They want you to worship the government, the state, if you will. Okay. So that's pure communism. Then there's other forms of it, like fascism. If you go back to Hitler, Hitler was a communist, but he chose the industries that he wanted to control. He didn't care much about controlling bakeries in Germany, but he did the automobile industry, for example, in all these heavy industrial companies, right? And he used force to do it. And so that's a form of communism, but it's called fascism, okay? Then you take, then you go down from communism into socialism, and socialism is the state, or the government in this case, creates policies that spread your hard-earned income to somebody else. That's basically what that is.
Mm-hmm.
So in other words, you're going to work hard at your podcast and all your other endeavors and your books and all that, and that profit is going to be spread to me based on some bureaucrat's determination that I need some of your money. Okay. And that is totally, by the way, against the founding principles of this country. Right. If you go back to Madison and some of the others, they have quotes out there that says, I would challenge anybody to look at the federal government as a charity, which means that I can't spend money, my taxpayer money can't go to you. As much as I love you, I can't do that. The federal government can't do that. Well, we do that. Mm-hmm. It also means the federal government can't bail out corporations. It also means that they can't give Elon Musk, as much as he's a great guy, a $5 billion loan or tax breaks to start.
But hang on. Yeah. But they do bail out.
Yes,
they bail out, right? Yeah. Okay. Yes, just making sure that I'm following. So they're essentially breaking all of the rules.
Look what they did with GM.
Yeah.
They bailed GM out. Okay, when they're under hard times, and we did it with a lot of companies, starting Solera, which was a big waste of money, but it was also unconstitutional. Yeah. So I said this last time, whenever somebody takes money from you, Elsa, and gives it to a third party, whenever the government does that, they own you both now.
Right.
Okay. And that's what this is all about. This is all about control. Okay. So the abolition of property. So in other words, you don't own anything. Okay. A heavy graduated income tax, which is now what we have. I talked about that last time, how that's a tenet of Marxism. And the graduated income tax is to assure that the people who really achieve are knocked down to make them even with everybody else. Okay. So this whole business about starting where I started in a lower middle class, blue collar, and worked my way up to the C-suite in a major corporation, that stuff doesn't happen anymore. Right. According to these guys, that I should be neutralized. And our 16th Amendment allowed for the graduated income tax. The founding fathers, and this all ties back to our Constitution too, made sure that taxes had to come proportionate from the states. And like I said last time, if New Hampshire represents 5% of the nation's population, 5% of the taxes had to come from New Hampshire. No graduated tax. Now it's the more you make, the more you earn. Actually, I should put it this way: the more you make, the more you're penalized. Okay,
right.
And that is a tenet that got put in with the 16th Amendment, and people miss that. The abolition.
I'm sorry. Let me interrupt you for 1 second. Is you hear very frequently from that side, from the left, that the rich must pay their fair share. Is that a low-key Marxist messaging there? Because technically they do, right?
Yeah, it's a very low resolution statement that is not based on facts. Okay. And once you bring the facts into the picture, they will change the subject on you. They will tell you that the sky's gray now. Okay.
Right.
And that is not true. And as a matter of fact, I challenged a liberal not too long ago. Elon Musk doesn't pay any taxes. I said, okay, well, if that's the case, did you pay taxes last year? Yeah. How about I call up Elon? I have ways to get to him and have them trade. You guys trade your tax liabilities. You know that he paid $9 billion 1 year in taxes, and Elizabeth Warren said it wasn't enough. Okay. I love. Why don't you just trade tax positions with Elon? What did you pay for taxes? Okay, you paid $40,000. Okay, great. I'm sure Elon would love to have that tax liability. Right. But you said he paid nothing, so that's a good deal for you, right? Well, that's different. They'll say, why is it different? Just makes your statement asinine. Okay, and so again, trying to argue with them and bringing things like challenges like that is something we got to learn how to do.
Right. And Mark, you made
the-
a absolutely brilliant point there of exactly how to do that. And it's not to, go tit for tat for them. It's to ask them to explain their point, to, to back up what they're saying, essentially, like, okay, this is what you're saying. Tell me why. Where did you get this and
Yeah.
like you said, that's when they, they don't want to play anymore. Suddenly they want to take their ball and go home, because the game stopped being fun for them. So yes, that is, and I hate to call it a tactic, but it is, it is a way to combat the nonsense. So yeah, please, I'm sorry, go on.
Well, no, you're right, and I think this all goes down to sound bites that everybody seems to agree with.
Mhm.
Okay, one of them, by the way, is corporations don't pay income tax. Really? Yeah, Amazon didn't pay any tax last year. I know how to read a P&L. I'm an ex-finance guy. I was a CFO at one time.
Mhm.
I used to do taxes. I said, let me pull up their P&L and see how much tax that Amazon paid last year in income tax, because it's right on their financial statements that they have to disclose to the public because they're a public company. And you look at the number on there, and it's astonishing what they pay. And hey, by the way, you should probably call up Jeff Bezos and tell him that he overpaid his taxes. Maybe you should go in and be their accountant, because you should probably tell them that he paid $5 billion last year in income tax, and you said they don't pay anything. And we should hook you guys up, because I'm sure he wants to hear. The other one, the third one, is the abolition of inheritance rights. Okay. And this is going on, okay, because if you think about the estate tax, there are some states that tax on inheritance, most don't, and there are 13 states, I believe, that have inheritance estate taxes. Okay, so think about what an estate tax is. An estate tax is you worked all your life, you built a business, you own a home, and all of a sudden you die, and somehow they thought that dying is a taxable event. So now your heirs are now going to be taxed on everything that you leave into them. I look when my son Stephen got killed in Afghanistan. His fiance, her father owns a farm, and right near where you live, and best corn in the world, by the way. And when that property gets valued, if he dies and leaves it to her, it's not a liquid asset. She's going to have to come up with the estate taxes on it. So what does that mean? Wow. She has to sell it. She has to, because she has no liquid, or take a big loan out. Okay. And on a farm, that's not a proposition that's going to work. Right. So that's the way they take your inheritance. Okay. The confiscation, number 4, of property of all immigrants and rebels. Okay. Again, confiscation of property. The nationalization of banking and credit is number 5. That is exactly what Thomas Jefferson was afraid of. He did not want a central bank. And in 1913, we passed the Federal Reserve Act. And the Federal Reserve, I think I described, we should probably do a whole show on the Federal Reserve.
Sure.
If you know how they work, you'll see that there is zero incentive for the clowns that run that. And it's not a government agency, by the way. They're 12 separate corporations. How they make money by an unstable economy, and their mission is to stabilize the economy. They are responsible for the 1929 stock crash, stock market crash, the Depression, the Great Depression, the 1987 crash, the 2008 economic crash, and the one that we're about to go into, because we will be going into one.
So, in a nutshell, they're not good at their job.
Oh, they're very good at their job. They're very good at their job. Yeah. And that's the thing, that people will look at that and say, well, they're incompetent. We got to get somebody better to run that. No. The whole framework of the system is flawed, and it needs to go away. Okay. And Thomas Jefferson warned us about the central bank. There's more to that we should talk about some other day. Okay, here's one that you're going to love. Number 6 is centralization of the means of communication and transport. You start controlling the message, okay, which is going on right now.
Absolutely going on.
First Amendment. This is why we have a First Amendment.
Right.
Now, you can allow anybody you want, and you can censor anybody you want on your podcast, because you're not the government. Right. Okay. But the government can't do that. And when the government,
people get very confused by this. Very confused by this.
That's my First Amendment right. No, it's all about the government not infringing on your right to say something.
Right. And meanwhile, we have Kamala Harris saying that, referring to Elon Musk's right to free speech is a privilege. She used the word privilege. His free speech, our free speech, is a privilege, not a right. And, there's another example of them, changing words, changing out words that fit their agenda. So now you're going to hear, and I'll bet you anything, now you're going to hear that word a lot more. You know, it's a privilege to all of our rights. They're going to refer to them as privileges, and they're going to change that mindscape in the people that listen.
Let me ask you this. So what does that imply? It implies that they are granting these rights to you from the government. And that is totally opposite of what the Constitution is about. The Constitution is the limitation on the federal government to infringe on our rights. And there's two types of rights. Technically, there's enumerated rights that are written in the Constitution, and those rights, those enumerated rights, typically address the grievances that you'll find in the Declaration of Independence. There's 27 of them. So, like for example, I'll give you one little example: is the right to prohibit the government from housing military in your own home. The British were famous for that. So that is in the Constitution, okay? And people say, well, it's not constitutional. You can't do that because it's not in the Constitution. There's other rights that you have called inalienable rights that come from God, okay? The right to defend yourself, the right to raise a family, the right to educate your kids, the right to, you know, have a commerce, a job, to earn a living. All that's not in the Constitution. That doesn't mean they're not rights, okay?
Right.
And so the founders addressed the grievances that were bestowed upon them from the King George, okay? And it went on they gave them a lot of time, and it started with the Stamp Act, and 10 years later, they finally said, you know what, this ain't working. Let's write this declaration, and they all signed it, and they signed a death warrant when they did it. But people don't understand that the government doesn't give you any rights, not at all. They can't. That's a key framework of our founding, that the government doesn't grant rights. But they all think they do, and this and your buddy there that you imitate, thinks that you do, right? And
she truly believes it. I mean, her father wrote, you know, her own father wrote a book on all of that. He's a Marxist economist, which sounds like it would be a little contradiction, but based on
that's an oxymoron.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
So that's another one. Okay. And by the way, we have the Federal Communication Commission. All right, which limits radio stations to 50,000 watts. Where in the Constitution does the federal government have the right to control the airwaves? Remember what Wolfman Jack did? I actually went to I went to Acuna, Mexico, and right across the way, the Rio Grande was his radio station. Okay, Wolfman Jack, he had this antenna. Now, it was a defunct station at this time when I saw it, because he died, but he blasted, I don't know how many thousands of watts into the West Coast, and they heard him everywhere. Okay. And that's how it became. I actually was at that radio station. Okay.
And so the whole point is to literally limit the reach, right?
Yeah. They want to control the reach because they're afraid that if you have a big reach, okay, you're going to be able to control the masses with your message. Now, we have other forms of communication, but that 50,000 station, the big radio stations like in your area, they're limited to 50,000 watts.
Interesting.
And that's a federal law that they put in. Well, the FCC should be abolished. We shouldn't have the FCC at all, but we do.
Right.
So in the means of transport. So this is all about control, right?
Right.
7, factories and means of production owned by the state. We talked about that. Okay. 8, industrial armies and equal liability of all labor. All right. So again, you could be a brain surgeon or you could be a janitor, and I'm not trying to demonize janitors, but those are viewed equal in the eyes of communists. Okay, in terms of their value to society and what they would be compensated at. You should not be compensated more to be a brain surgeon than you should a laborer, let's say, putting parts together. Right. And I think I told you last time that when my wife taught high school, the school that you're very familiar with, she told her they were all up on socialism, and she said, okay, everybody's going to get a C. Half the kids were elated, like, I'm going to work my ass off just to get a D. I don't have to do crap now, and I'm going to get a C. This is great. Right. My father's going to be proud of me, And other kids like, I'm not going to be able to go to Harvard. I'm not going to make the honors society. I'm not going to. I can't get a C in this class. Hey, you guys, you want socialism? Okay.
This is it. So, and therein lies, if people want to say, well, what's so bad? I mean, obviously the list is long, but if somebody says to you, why is socialism so bad? It sounds pretty nice, Well, it eliminates any incentive to try to achieve. Why do you care? It will, at the very best, lend to a sense of apathy. Who cares? Doesn't matter what I do. It doesn't matter what I do because I'm always going to be at this level. I don't have to, strive. I don't have to, basically do anything to improve, So, I mean, that right there, if you don't want to look at anything else as far as the box of negatives, which is overflowing, that right there, like you lose all drive and incentive to achieve and to succeed and to do better and be better
Yeah.
at anything and in anything. So, it makes me a little crazy, Mark, that this isn't so obvious. It's very frustrating to me, and I'm sure to you and anyone who understands the bigger picture of this. It's very frustrating when you hear otherwise pretty intelligent people sit there and say, well, social, it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. It's good. It's nice. How did you get to this point in life and think that this could ever turn out well? I mean, how long is the list of failed socialist slash communist countries? I'm just gonna go down a short list. Soviet
Sure.
Union, right? There's a given. East Germany, Indonesia, Czechoslovakia, Cuba, North Korea, Ethiopia, Cambodia, Venezuela, and Albania. That's the list I have. I mean, no one, correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, no one can give a list of socialist countries that have or are succeeding, correct?
That's right. And many of those that you mentioned are communist countries actually too. There's a fine line. I
Right.
told you last time that the socialism
One bleeds into the other. Is that correct?
Right. It's a blur,
you.
right. And that's why you don't recognize it sometimes, because the benefits, I put those in air quotes, okay, but the benefits of socialism, as perceived by those who don't understand that it's the proverbial frog in the pot in cold water that's being turned up very slowly. Okay. And sooner or later the frog starts boiling. And that's what's going on with socialism. And they're right though, because as I told you last time, there will be winners in socialism and communism. It just won't be you.
Yeah.
That's what I tell people. It won't be you. You're being used right now. Okay. As a useful idiot. I hate to be insulting, but you're a useful idiot to them. And once they don't need you, you're out. And a good example, the best example of that is Joe Biden.
Wow. Yes. You aren't kidding.
They kicked his ass out. In all due respect, that was wrong for the people the thousands that voted for him in the primary. Yeah. Okay. As much as I disdain Biden and his policies, they abridged the Constitution by installing Kamala Harris, and just they don't need him anymore. He wasn't going to be useful. Right. And if they could do that to the president, believe me, they could do that to you. Okay.
Right.
And that is to me one of the best things that happened.
Yeah. Well, it opened eyes, right? It at least opened some more eyes that were closed. I hope, man, and not nearly enough, because I see them in my social media news feed. They're, they just in lockstep with I'm with her, and vote for Kamala is a vote for democracy, and that one like I blow a gasket every time I see that, and I have twice now broken my rule of do not engage on the personal level with people that I are friends with, and I had to. I'm like, I'm sorry, can you explain to me how a vote for Kamala Harris, who was chosen for you as the Democrat nominee, that you had no say in, who had, the lowest approval rating, who's now your messiah, essentially, your queen, your goddess. Like, explain to me how that is what you're calling it. And of course they can't. They can't.
Well, and explain to me also how she's going to fix the economy when 2 months ago she said it was fine. Right. How she's going to fix the border when 2 months ago she said the border is fine. Right. When 2 months ago she said Biden is sharp as a tack. How is she going to fix these things if they presumably are already in great shape? Okay. So,
she's boxed herself in, right? Because no matter what she says, it's, if she says this needs fixing, which is, she's been on that page. We're going to fix this. We're going to, improve that. We're going to do these things. And then, of course, the question is, well, you had like 3.5 years. Why haven't you done a damn thing? Why? She can't win. She shouldn't win. Like, literally, she should not win.
What's scary though is that, and again, I was talking to Carrie Lake about this last night. The polls are all messed up too. You got to remember who's doing these polls. Right. Okay. So the real poll is going to be on November 5th, as long as, and there will be cheating. Okay. Yes. You got to remember, Republicans count votes and Democrats count ballots. It's a big difference. But getting on to this, I'm on number, which one? Oh, 8. 9.
Right. Oh, 9, sorry.
Industrial armies and equal liability for all labor. Okay, we talked about that. And then 9, but industrial armies are to enforce your way of imposing your policies. Okay. And millions have died because of that. Number 9, abolish distinction between town and country. Now, what does that mean? They want a borderless country. They don't want states to have states' rights because they want one central government where they control everything. And the whole idea with the founding fathers was that states are technically they're independent nations, they're sovereign nations, okay, under a federation called the United States. And the states, aside from the supremacy clause in the Constitution, says that the federal law is the law of the land. You can't change it at the state level. And they also put a word in there, pursuant thereof, which means it is, if it's constitutional. If it's a non-constitutional law, then you don't have to abide by it at the state level. And we have the 10th Amendment that says anything not enumerated in the Constitution, the federal government can't do. That means it's left to the states or to the people. That's what the 10th Amendment says, okay? It's a very important amendment that we sometimes miss. And so, for example, I'll give you one example. There is a law in the books that prohibits marijuana, okay? Why are all the states, including my state of Arizona, allowing marijuana? Well, I'm against that because I do believe marijuana is a gateway drug. But that aside, okay, it is up to the states to determine whether or not they have marijuana. And why? It's a federal law. What about the supremacy clause? Because the federal government knows and the states know it's a non-constitutional law, and the federal government will lose in court. So the federal government doesn't do anything. They just stay away. National ID, that's another one. There's a lot of these things that are out there right now that, but our state governments do not do a good enough job at nullifying the unconstitutional mandates that got placed on us by these agencies and our congressmen, okay, who write the laws. So that's another subject for another day. I did a whole episode on that called nullification. And but they don't want you to have borders.
Right.
They don't want you to be able to go to another state because they provide a law that is you're in favor of versus another one, okay? And as much as I'm against abortion, that was what that call was all about with the Supreme Court that said, hey, look, it's a states' rights issue. No matter how distasteful you think abortion is, matters not. It's a state right issue, and it should not have come out of the federal government. There's no mandate in the Constitution that says that's a federal issue.
Right. Which simplified means really, people are, all up in arms about this and, saying that, they're going to ban abortion completely, blah, 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 and all that stuff. No, it's quite literal. It's going back to the states, which technically is supposed to mean that it goes back to the people of each state. So you decide, the people in your state are deciding by majority, right? What your state is going to permit.
Your representatives would vote the laws in that hopefully represent your voice as citizens, and those those state representatives represent you, right? That's how it's supposed to work, and you're absolutely right. And so, but they don't want you to see. The Marxists lose control when you have states control over these type of things, right? The last one is, I love this one, free education. I had a relative say to me once, well, education's free, so what's the big deal? Really? You know that the town I lived in, up where you live, 70% of my taxes every year was for the education, for the
no doubt.
70%.
Especially that town.
Yeah.
Towns like it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and this is nothing too good for our kids. So the more money we spend, the better off we're going to be, right? That's what they think, anyway.
Well, and there's an irony in that too. We're talking, of course, about the public school system. The irony in that is they want all of this funding, this tax money, and they also want you to shut up and sit back and not say a word and not have any say in what your kids are learning. A little bit of irony there, Just my
there's a good example, Elsa, of socialism. The town that you live in, and every town for that matter, you are paying for education whether or not you have kids in the school system or not.
Right.
Okay, and that is a form of socialism because at least the town I came from, they spread the taxes based on your property value, and that is a pure form of socialism. Okay, you think about it. You think about it. If I own a $500,000 house and you own a $200,000 house, or $250,000, let's say, I'm going to pay twice as much taxes as you do because my house is valued more.
Right.
Okay. Well, what's wrong with that picture? Okay.
Mhm.
Especially when you might have 8 kids in the school system and I have none. Okay.
Right.
But it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
That's a form of socialism. Okay.
Yeah.
Again, you're redistributing people's money based on some criteria, in this case, house
Mhm.
values. And the last one, so free education. And if you really, people said to me, we should have free medical care, and we should have free education. We should have free healthcare. And I'd say, oh, so you agree with slavery, right?
Mm.
What do you mean? Well, if you
Explain.
wanted to be free, the doctors would have to work for free.
Mm.
It's exactly what happened with the slaves.
Right.
I mean, maybe
What do you think their incentive is going to be to give you the best diagnosis, the best care, and the
God.
best everything?
Oh my God. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So you really are supporting slavery.
Yeah.
No, that's different.
That's a great point.
No, it's not. Because you would have to have your doctor work for zero to be able to serve you and your family. Okay. To treat you and your family. Now that's not really what it means. Well, somebody's got to pay them. If you're going to pay the doctor, somebody's got to pay them. So how's it going to be free? Who's going to pay for it? Okay.
Right.
And they don't get that, But
They
the
really
whole thing
don't.
about it- no.
And the same thing with the, free college.
Free college.
They don't understand. Somebody's paying. Somebody is paying.
Boy, that's another subject for. Boy,
Oh, it sure is.
so much
It
we have to
sure
talk
is.
about. Well, let me give you
We
some
could branch
examples.
off in so
Oh
many
my God,
places.
yeah. Well, let me give the abolition of property. Okay, where the federal government comes in and takes land and all that. Let me give you some specific government examples. The Waters of the United States Act, how the government's controlling our water systems. The Antiquities Act. The Antiquities Act of 1906 was something to put in that said, hey, look, Congress, the president can deem a landmark that has historical and scientific value. Okay. Well, an example of that might be we have this big meteor here in Arizona that hit years ago. That's deemed, you can't screw with that site. That's deemed a historic under the Antiquities Act. Okay, site that you can't screw with. You can't go build on it or do anything like that, right? Well, what Biden's doing with the Antiquities Act is he's using it for scientific reasons to say cattle farmer that he's claiming back cattle land, farming land from cattle farmers as federal land, and he's claiming the Antiquities Act. He has this thing called 30 by 30, where they want to own 30% of the land in the United States by 2030. Nobody talks about this, right? And he's using the Antiquities Act by saying, and I hope you are sitting down, so that's good. Cow flatulence is causing global warming.
Right.
So we have to reduce the amount of land and the amount of cattle. Okay. So he's using that as a scientific reason to claim that land under the Antiquities Act. Okay, that's what's going on. Okay, the Environmental Protection Agency is another one, the CDC. Okay, where they actually place COVID rent restrictions on landlords who couldn't evict people for not paying their rent. What happened was the landlords lost their property because they couldn't pay their mortgage. Guess who took over the properties? The banks,
surprise,
the financial
surprise,
institution, and all the big donors that contribute to these politicians. Okay.
Yes.
Follow the money all the time. Okay. Taxation, zoning, regulate, all this stuff. These are specific examples. Okay. And I just go back to the biblical conflict on this because I want to tie that in. There's something called the 10 Commandments. Number 8 is thou shalt not steal. And number 10 is thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's goods. I don't know. I'm a simple guy.
Just saying.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
The heavier progressive income tax, I think we talked about, but we do have that with the 16th Amendment now, where we didn't have that before. The founders were very key, very, 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 keyed into the fact that we can't tax people based on their progress. Okay. And that we have to, now one thing, for example, that Sweden has that's right. People point to Sweden as this successful socialistic country. Sweden is actually a capitalistic country, if you really understand what capitalism is. But they have socialistic policies, okay?
Right.
Everybody there pays taxes. Everybody. From the janitor to the CEO. And matter of fact, your hourly worker will pay 60%. Okay. And so they got that right from I'm not saying the 60% is wrong. There's
I was going to say, whoa.
Okay. But they got it right because 50% of the people in this country don't pay taxes. Okay. And if you think about that, you're going to run for office and you're going to say, I'm going to cut the cost of government. First thing they think of is my benefits are going to get cut.
Yes.
Because they're not paying for it.
Right.
Okay. So that's what's going on here. And then again, the biblical conflict, I have Luke 3:12, 13 says, collect no more than you have been ordered to. Which the the tax collectors in the Bible all got a black eye because they abused their power
Right.
and took more than they should have. And that's exactly what's going on right now with our
Absolutely.
government.
Yep.
Okay,
Very,
so
very clearly. And, it's, it's one of those things. It goes back to something that we were kind of saying earlier that, how I was lamenting that, how do people not see this? How are they so blind to it and so accepting of all of it? And it comes back to that this has been done incrementally, very slowly,
right,
very gradually, very quietly, right? And they didn't notice. We didn't notice that all of these rights were being taken away from us, and terms and conditions and all of these things changed and altered in these little baby steps. And then when it was so obvious, which is now so obvious, is when people are waking up and saying, whoa, 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 wait a minute, something's not right here. And the scary thing is, it's like, how do we unravel this tremendous mess? Well, the only way to do it is for someone like Trump to come in, and RFK Jr. and Elon Musk and all of these insanely smart, wealthy people, ironically, to come in and do a big fat clean sweep and overhaul everything from the ground up. And that is, of course, why the root of why there was so much, resistance is like the understatement of the year, right? But so much resistance to Trump, because that is the truth, because he sees it, he's calling it out, as well as RFK Jr. They're all calling it out and saying, well, this is a mess and it needs an overhaul, and you people need to get the heck out. And, all comes down to money, power, greed.
Yeah, and I think it's also bigger than just our government too, because there is if we have time to talk about it, a globalist attack on our way of life.
Yeah.
And we're the only ones that stand in the way. Vladimir Lenin had a 3-point plan for communism. His first point was, we need to convert Europe, which they did pretty much.
Yeah.
Then we need to go to Asia, because you go back 30 years or so, China wasn't what it is today as far as being communist. Okay, 30, 40 years. But we have to convert Asia, which they did. And then the last one was, we have to convert the United States, not North America, the United States. And notice he said Europe, Asia, United States. He didn't say North America, right? And that's what's going on now, because they were successful in the first two. And then, of course, you mentioned South America, Africa is the same way. All that is pretty much in one flavor or another communist. Okay.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of different, scales to think about when you look at pure communism. But the thing I want to bring back, though, is, and why we called our podcast the Constitution Solution, because I think a majority of our problems would go away if we just follow the Constitution. Okay.
I agree.
And
I agree.
Yeah, we would. If you go back to the tenets of this, you mentioned earlier, Mark, to define progressive. It started with Woody Wilson. I call him Woody. Woodrow Wilson. He was the father of the progressive movement, and all the progressive means, and it's a fancy title. It's state of the art. I'm above the fray. I can think higher level than you can, Elsa, because I'm progressive. Okay, means that you have a disdain for the Constitution. That's all it means. Okay, and the Constitution gets in the way of these Marxists that want to control you. It's something that is in their way. And that's why it gets, degraded all the time. It gets mocked. It's an old document. It's the law of the land. It's not a suggestion. It's the law of the land.
You mean these things aren't our privileges? These aren't privileges for us?
Oh,
the rights?
Yeah.
What? Yeah.
They're privileges.
As soon as I heard it, I went, this woman.
Good for you. When your radar goes up like that, that's awesome.
Well, you're right. And that is the thing. And that, I think, I feel like this is hugely the part of this conversation. The use of, before we got on air, we were talking about calling out Marxism, using that word more frequently in your day-to-day vernacular with people, and putting it at the forefront of people's minds, that they will, at the very least, if they don't want to agree with you right now, or if they don't want to see it right now, it's an earworm. You know what I mean? It's in their head, and it will maybe provoke them to go, well, wait, let me go look this up and see what the heck they're talking about. Why are they saying this? And then ding, 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 the light bulbs hopefully will start going off. And I'll quickly say one of my quote unquote favorite ones. It's not a favorite. It's just a very popular term that we love to say, myself included. I hashtag it like, half the time in my posts, Kamala's word salads, and the truth. And this is not my wisdom. This is wisdom I gained from other people who are way smarter explaining this and saying this. So I don't want to take any credit for this, just for passing it along, that these, yes, they are word salads, but they are very, very deliberate word salads. It is intentional. It is not stupidity. It's not incompetency, like we said earlier. It is very, very deliberate. It is meant to confuse you. It's meant to, just give you these lofty, pleasant feelings like the party of joy, all of these things. So we just want to feel good. And, isn't that so everything it angers me. I'm segueing for one split second. It angers me, the use of the term joy, because to me, joy is such a biblical connotation. Joy, rejoice, all of those things. So it irritates the daylights out of me that they're trying to take that, as their little slogan. But whatever, her phrase, her very, very famous phrase that she uses over and over again. She probably stopped because we make fun of her all the time. But see what can be unburdened by what has been. I'm sorry, I didn't do the impression for you guys. But that whole thing, right? When you actually stop and think about, see what can be. So we're looking into the future, unburdened, unbothered by what has been. By what has been, what are we talking about? History? We're talking about history. We're talking about everything that got us to where we are today. We want you to forget all about that. Don't think about any of that. Just forget it. Let's just focus on now and all of our joy. And, so very, very sneaky means of just brainwashing and manipulating.
It is exactly what it is. Exactly right. By the way, I had a very interesting take on that whole unburdened crap. Okay. That she had. So last night I went up and I was asked to introduce Carrie Lake. Carrie Lake's a friend of mine. She's running for Senate here and endorsed by Trump and all that. And I'm helping her with policy and stuff like that, right? And she had a very interesting statement. The unburdened by the past is code for we want to be unburdened by our Constitution. That's a very interesting take. And I hadn't thought about that. But when Carrie Lake said that, I said to her later, I said, hey, Carrie, I said, that's insightful. I'm mad at myself. I didn't get that, because I usually pick up on it, but it's like, wow, yeah, that unburdened by the past. So forget about our history. Right. When you tear down Thomas Jefferson at the University of Virginia, a school that he founded, okay, and put his ass on the line for this country, because he would have been, as we said last time, disemboweled. He would have been tortured, not until though his family was in front of him. That's what the English would have done if we lost the war. Okay. And we have to tear down his statue on a school that he created. Awful. Oh my God! It's
just madness. It's ignorance and madness, and very scary. And I think our purpose and our point, going forward now and going forward, is to really educate people, wake them up, and help them see what's really, really happening right underneath their noses, and before it's too late. And I know every election cycle, we all say this election is so important. It's so crucial to the future and to, really, guys, this one is so important. And I, along with many people, believe and feel very strongly that if she stays in office, we're kind of done for. Like, we will be in the midst of the fall of our nation. And
she's been installed. Most of our presidents since Woody Wilson have been installed. They haven't been elected. They have been installed. Most of them, not all of them. Okay, and Trump being an exception, a big exception.
Right.
But I want to just move into a little bit of the globalism here, because in the Marxist agenda, and I know we're running out of time, but I want to just talk about a couple of things here. The World Economic Forum. There's a million of these type of groups out there. Okay. That are just anti-American, anti-capitalistic groups, and they all comes in different shapes and sizes. One being the United Nations, which started with the League of Nations that Woody Wilson created. So he did not want to be bound by the Constitution, and he was installed by J.P. Morgan and all the industrialists. And I don't know, the Federal Reserve Act, and we'll talk more about that maybe another day, but was passed The Federal Reserve Act was passed on December 23rd, 1913, when Congress was away and only a few remained. But right around Christmas, that's when they snuck it into the American people, and nobody complained. Okay, that's how they did this, right? And then Woody signed it. But when you look at the globalist agenda, and I like to look at the World Economic Forum as a pinnacle of what this is, run by Klaus Schwab, these people, and believe me, if you don't believe me, ask them, are the smartest people that know best, okay, for you and me, okay? And guys like John Kerry, Al Gore, and all the other clowns in there. You got Tim Cook, who runs Apple, who thinks that China is the model that we should model ourselves after here in the United States. Okay, and most of his product is made there. I've been there. I saw where his product's made by a company called Foxconn.
Right.
But let me just read a couple quotes from Charles Schwab, sorry. Klaus said, China is a role model for other nations. Okay, these are his quotes. This is not my quotes. This is not my opinion.
Right.
This is what they said, okay? I'm just going to read a few of them. Capitalism as we know it is dead. Mark Benioff, one of the globalist leaders over there. The whole way we do business will have to change. Angela Merkel. Capitalism is the worst of all economic systems. Neil Ferguson. It is government's responsibility first and foremost to create an environment where corporations will behave. Then be some mayo. Now think about that. Who's going to set the rules for behavior? Okay, you?
Right.
Won't be me.
Right.
Won't be you. Okay.
Nope.
I love this one, John Kerry, and I'll finish with a really good John Kerry one. Okay. When you start to think about it, it's pretty extraordinary that we, select group of human beings, are able to sit in a room and actually talk about saving the planet.
Wow. No ego there, right? No ego.
I mean, you got the smartest guys in the room. And again, if you don't believe me, just ask them, okay?
Exactly.
But this is my favorite, Elsa. This is my favorite. And there's others too, by the way. I didn't talk. I'll send you this presentation. This is John Kerry. So how do we get there? It's money, 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 money. Did I miss a money? That's his quote. Okay. You see what this is about?
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 monies. Wow. That was his quote. Okay.
Wow.
That's his quote. Okay. And you got to remember, and I think you know this is better than anybody, is that communism doesn't work without a complicit media.
Right.
Okay. It doesn't work. And I just, in this presentation, when you get it, I'll show it to you. Here are the people of Time Magazine's Persons of the Year over the years. We had people like, Greta Thunberg is, she was like unbelievably insightful and informative, and where she got her science degree. She just blew me away, how her knowledge of.
So brilliant.
Oh my God.
Shouldn't we be dead by now? Shouldn't Earth have imploded by now?
I should have died
according to her
10 times. I'm a little bit older than you, and I remember in the 70s it was global cooling.
Yes. Yes.
When that didn't work, they changed it to global warming.
Right.
When that didn't work, they changed it to climate change. Now they cover both ends.
Yes.
Okay.
Just call it climate change. Then we can just switch back and forth anytime we want.
Right.
Yeah.
We can control the climate, right? Well, then stop the hurricanes so they don't hit Florida,
Right.
Time Person of the Year, Angela Merkel. Al Gore. Barack Obama. By the way, Barack Obama won a Nobel Peace Prize before he took president. He did nothing.
Nothing.
Trump should have won 3. When he brokered the peace deals in the Middle East with Bahrain and UAE and all that with Israel, he should have won literally 3. And believe me, if that ever happened, well, it would never happen with Obama because he's an anti-Semite. When you have Al Farrakhan to the White House and celebrate him and embrace him figuratively and physically, and you tell me you're not an anti-Semite, why would you have Farrakhan to the White House?
Right.
Okay.
Exactly.
So Barack Obama was one, Al Gore, Bernie Sanders, Putin, man's time of the year. And my favorite is Adolf Hitler.
Yeah. How about that?
Okay.
How about that one? And they always, they backpedal by saying, well, we're not saying that we think they're so great. It's just that they were the most influential of the time. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah. It's, it's very overwhelming when you realize how interwoven this all is. They all are. And what a massively big, huge enemy, honestly, that we are up against. And it's not to say that it should make us, roll over and take it. But awareness and understanding and realization is really the foundation of resistance to what they're doing. And man, oh man, I mean, again, if we can do anything, and I mean collectively, not just you and I mean collectively, people who are paying attention, can be vocal, can be out there and sharing what we know and understand, and just encouraging people to educate themselves, look at what's happening right underneath your noses, and yes, that it is global. It is overwhelming. It's overwhelming. It's
Well,
disheartening. All of those things, but knowledge is power.
I always think about, try to get in the heads of these
Yeah.
people and the globalists. Okay.
Mhm.
We keep saying communism and globalism, right? But here's the thing: if you understand the Communist Manifesto, which isn't all that hard to understand, and you
Right.
go to that one tenet that says they want borderless, states and countries,
Mhm.
right? They want one world order, is what they
Right.
want. And then they say, well, we support communism. Okay, so let's play that out. Let's say, okay, you got China as communist, you've got
Mhm.
Cuba, you've got Venezuela, you've got all these other countries, you've got Russia,
Right.
and go down the list of all the communist countries that, let's say everybody's communist.
Mm.
All of a sudden you have communist regimes, and that's not good for the
Right.
globalists. Okay,
Right.
because now they're going to lose power
Mhm.
because each one of these communist regimes is making their own call.
Right.
So the globalists are no longer in power. So in a
Mhm.
sense, the same way that the socialists are useful idiots to the communists, I think the communists are useful idiots to the globalists.
Sure.
See what I'm saying?
Yeah, I
That's
do,
how
and
think
I
about
think
it.
you're
Yeah,
absolutely correct.
yeah, yeah,
Absolutely. Right.
yeah. Now it may not happen
Yep.
in our lifetime, okay, because this takes
Mhm.
time. But I really believe that if someday they get their way and everybody turns communist, the
Mhm.
globalists will have an all-out assault because they'll have amassed an army and all
Right.
kinds of other things, and
Mhm.
they will destroy the communist regimes.
Yep.
Okay, but the communists don't realize that
Right.
they're useful idiots too.
Mhm.
Okay, now maybe in
This
their
all
lifetime
has
they
so
don't care.
many this has so many waves of
Oh yeah,
revelation washing over me. Right now, so many waves of revelation I'm hearing in all of this. It's just wild, wild as can be. Um, uh, Once again, just like last time we talked, Mark, I feel like we just scratch a surface
we
of
did,
so
we did.
much more conversations to be had. And I've already like kind of pinned you down to do more of these. And I so look forward to it. I mean, an
I'm real
hour is
cheap. All
just,
you have to do is buy me tiramisu, and I'll do anything for you.
I love it. I love it. Absolutely. I'm right there with you. Give me dessert. I'm good.
Maybe a couple
Oh my
glasses of wine
goodness.
too, but other than that, but
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's like the given. Please, come on.
Also, I would
Um,
say this before we end here. Okay,
sure.
I told you last time I'm a pretty good problem solver. I learned from the
Mhm.
best in Japan and all that, and all my studies there. And the way I look at this, the fundamental root cause
Mhm.
of everything. You can argue about the Marxist agenda and the people want to make money and profit from
Sure.
this and communism and all the other things we talked about. But to me, it's our divorcing ourselves from God.
I agree. Yes.
That to me is the fundamental uh, hall pass
Yeah.
for allowing them to do what they're doing.
Right.
Okay. Because
Yes.
when we divorce ourselves from God, and I think it was John Adams that said that our Constitution won't work without a moral and religious people. Okay.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so when we say, God, and we can, tear down God at Christmas and, all the other things that we know, what's
Mhm.
the first thing that Hitler did when he conquered all these, they burned the churches.
Yep.
Okay. They killed the priests and the nuns and all that and
Mhm.
murdered them. Okay. And, a lot of records, my father-in-law comes from Poland, God rest his soul. And a lot of
Mhm.
the records for birth and birth records were kept in churches. And a lot of
Oh,
them are gone now
wow.
in Europe because of what the Germans did, But
Mm.
and then you say to yourself, well, why are they all atheists?
Mm.
That's why. Okay,
Yeah.
because they don't want
That's
to
why.
have you be beholden to any god. It was
Right.
funny because Hitler was such an anti-Semite that
Mhm.
he never admitted that he implemented the Marxist agenda.
Wow.
Okay, because he was Jewish.
Oh, of course. Yes. Of
Fact
course.
of the matter was he wasn't Jewish. Okay,
Right.
but Hitler thought he was. Okay,
Right.
so he just denied he did everything that the Marxist agenda called for, except
Mhm.
for
And just called it his own,
I'm
basically,
not doing
right?
Marxism because he was Jewish and he was wrong about that. He was wrong
Yeah.
about a lot of things, but
Mm.
he also, and maybe another subject for another day, he also idolized Margaret Sanger's writings on eugenics, which
Yes.
is
Founder of
what
Planned Parenthood.
founder
Mhm.
of Planned Parenthood.
Yep.
And I believe her first clinic was in downtown inner city Detroit. because and by the way, it's not an opinion. It's like her writing that says we have to
Yes.
eliminate the black population.
Yes.
And we're still being
She wrote a
duped by that
letter
because-
to leaders of black churches, right?
Yep,
To
yep.
yeah,
Yeah.
to say,
Hitler
hey, let's
idolized
downplay
her.
this a little bit, but yeah.
Yeah. And many people think that his whole extermination scheme, by the way, if you want a lesson in human behavior someday, we could talk about that, about how he split the duties up because it was really causing a huge mind warp on the guys that had to kill all these people. He split this up into about 10 divisions of labor so that nobody was accountable. It's kind of like when you're saying, well, I know I voted for Biden, but I'm not, it's not, I didn't cause all this. No, you're complicit.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, when you do 1/10 of killing somebody, you don't feel that you really killed them. And
Yeah.
they were unbelievably, they were masters at psychology.
I was going to say they were diabolically brilliant, you know, and that's not a
big time.
compliment. Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
no, that's right. That's the right way to say it. That's the right way to say it. So I think God is the key to this whole thing.
Yes.
And it's easy to work on emotion. It's hard to be a conservative because you have to do your research. You have to have the faculty to be able to do it. Know how to do research. Know how to argue and debate and know what's BS and what's not. And as much as I think I know, and I've done a lot of work on this, I'm sitting here saying, how much more don't I know? And especially when it comes to the underlying operatives that are tearing us down. There's stuff going on right now that none of us know about. I'm smart enough to know that. I just don't know what it is. Okay. So
I've always been a fan of the saying, what I know best is that I know nothing.
yeah, and the older I get, the more I know what I don't know. Yeah.
Yes.
That's true.
So true.
Hey, when I was 20, I knew everything, by the way. I knew everything. And I was going to live forever.
Right? Didn't we? We had all the answers. All you had to do was come ask us as 20-year-olds. We knew everything.
I was brilliant. I was brilliant.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're right. Older I get, the less I know. But oh my goodness, this was such a great talk. I hate for it to end. Actually, I could do this. I could sit here all day. My back doesn't even matter that it's going to start hurting. It doesn't even matter. I would suffer through just to keep having this conversation. So obviously that means we have to do this again very, very soon. And I think one of the things I'd like to do, we can maybe do a couple of things. But one of the things I'd like to do is I'd like to sit and talk about, because I'm a big, all right, we know what the problem is, and let's talk about solutions. So I want to have a solutions conversation with you, which ties in very well with
actually was a slide I didn't get to, but I have a slide right here that talks about the solution, what we need to do. You're absolutely right.
All right,
you're absolutely right.
Right? Yeah. That's our part 2. We just named our part 2. I love it. All right.
Because I think that's going to tie into some other things like our right as a state to nullify. Okay. That's one of the steps of the solution. And there's a lot to that. But no, I have a slide right here I'm looking at right now. I'll send you this presentation. And it's called
I love it. I love it. You just gave you just gave the teaser for the next show. There's the teaser right there. There's one thing on this. You did. That was a teaser. I love it. We're going to use it.
My wife tells me I'm a tease. I don't know. Maybe you're right.
I love your wife, and I haven't even met her yet.
Oh, she's going to love you too. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, my friend, thank you so much for sitting with me and talking about this and educating me, because there's still so much that I want to learn and I want to understand. And you are, a great pathway to that. So I appreciate you.
Well, look, everything I learned, I got off the internet. So, it's true.
Absolutely. It's
right?
true.
It's on the internet.
Yeah, it came from the internet.
I just
like Einstein said
the other day. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. Okay. All right, my friends. We appreciate you hanging out with us and, right. And if you learned anything new, if you already knew this stuff, whatever the case is, share, and then share it some more. Okay. So it was great talking with you guys, and we'll see you in the next episode. Take care.